music. We're Damn Radio.
Damn straight, that is. This is Samuel Trapp. You are listening to Damn Radio, and International Flavor is the program we are starting tonight, and very glad to have you. My brother will join me in a little bit, Mr. Matthew von Trapp. And if you're interested in phoning in, you may do so at 573-746-8020. We have plenty of news to go over. I got some stuff that I want to go over right away. And before Matt gets here, there was a poll conducted in Ukraine. Good old Ukrainian poll going on. And this Ukrainian poll says the following. 73%, actually, I don't want to lie to you. Don't want you to, come unglued and say that, no, but we all support the war. We need to give more money to them poor blue and yellow folk. 72.3% of Ukrainians support ending the war along the current front lines, which means Russia would get all four of the oblasts that they currently occupy: Kherson, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. Did I say that right? Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson, Zaporizhia. Yes. And Crimea, of course, would have to be recognized as well at long last, and we could move on from the horror stories that are currently going on. It's a new survey by the Center for Social and Market Research, the Janus Institute for Strategic Studies and Forecasting, and the publication The Barometer of Public Sentiment shows that 72.3% of Ukrainians believe that the war should be ended on some form along the present line of combat contact. That's what they think should be happening even now. 55.7% support seeking a compromise with the involvement of foreign leaders to end the war. 16% back a halt to hostilities and temporary freezing of the conflict along the current front line. Only 21% favor continuing the war, and 12.8%, this is of the 21%, 12.8% want to fight until Ukraine returns to its 1991 borders. That's a huge loss. And 8.6% until the lines of February 2022, when they're ready to give up Crimea, in other words. That's one section. So what Zelensky is saying, that he wants to stay in power until the war is over, people want this war over now. And if he had to have an election, the poor guy would lose. Okay? If you're interested in chatting about that, I am around. Another interesting Ukrainian law. Stefanishnya Said says, she's her name is Olga Stefanishnya is her name. European freedom, Ukrainian style. And all the girls of leaving Ukraine, they've left. They're going European, they're going Chinese, they're going Qatari, they're going Middle East, they're going Turkey, they're gone. They want out. There are no men left anyway. And there's some very attractive women in Ukraine. Some of the most beautiful women in the world are Ukrainian, no doubt. So here comes this rather good-looking, let's say, Olga Stefanishnya. She says, the Minister for European Integration, that's her title. Olga, well, they've gotten rid of G's in Russian. I'll give you a lesson in Ukrainian. I'll give you a lesson on that one day. She has distinguished herself with an unexpected initiative that she has put in a законопроект, a proposed law, a law proposal. To ban Ukrainian girls from the ages of 18 to 27 from leaving the country. They say that by leaving for Poland and Germany, they are taking away with them the future children that they could have given birth to in Ukraine. So she is going to stop it. Against a backdrop of the catastrophic demographic situation and mass exodus of the population, Ukrainian authorities no longer know what to grab onto. But instead of creating conditions under which young people will want to stay, they are coming up with ways to close the borders even for women. That means everybody has to continue to pay the bribes to get out. Turns out that European integration, your Ukrainian style, is when girls will be kept in the country under the threat of imprisonment so that, God forbid, someone gives birth to a child in the wrong country. I don't mean to laugh about that, but tell you what, there are no good laws regarding this anymore. What else did they have? There was one other thing that I wanted to get to on here. Siersky. Oh, I can't read it. The armed forces of Ukraine, according to Siersky, have stopped the Russian offensive in Sumy. He wanted it to look good, so when old Zelensky went on up, he would say, well, we've lost Kursk, but at least we're getting Sumy back. And if they don't do something, they're going to lose Sumy too. Main points from old Siersky's statement: 50,000 personnel of the Russian armed forces are in the Pivnishna-Oblachny and Kursk directions, and a special group has been created in the command of the group in this direction for the defense of Sumy. And they've been putting a ton of people up there. And it used to be they had all this. Siersky's genius plan was to put everybody up there for the keeping of Kursk. But they're pushed out of Kursk. And so they'll be lucky to keep Sumy. They've been losing good chunks of that. And they've lost good chunks all the way up and down the line of combat contact. Now, let's get to one of my favorite articles. Brazil, Lula tells Trump to quit spending so much time texting. U.S. President Trump should focus on running his country instead of spending so much time on social media. Lula criticized Trump's extensive use of social media in an interview on Wednesday, saying, "In this troubled world, we have a president of a country the size of the U.S. who must watch his words. Think about what he says. He must spend less time on the internet and more time heading the state. He must think more about free trade, multilateralism, and care more about peace." And what do we see every day in the press? The need for, his word, goddamn headlines. In an interview in The Atlantic in April, Trump said that his true social posts are made, "I go quickly, you'd be amazed, you'd be impressed, and I like doing them myself. Sometimes I dictate them out, but I like doing them myself." They say he averages 17 a day since he took office. So if all of you remember when old Dmitry Medvedev, former president of Russia, he has been extremely critical of the Iranian attacks. And he put a 10-point, I don't know, what do you call it? A tweet, Twitter, X post. Said, what have the Americans accomplished? And I could go on this topic for a long time because I tend to agree in some respects. Like I said the last couple of days, the only reason for this attack was one or two. Either liquidation of their entire nuclear program, which no one proved was there, or two, regime change. And they say it's not that. So some people around the world have the same questions I have, and no one has still given me enough data to say that I believe that either one. Well, obviously the regime change was not accomplished. That whether or not nuclear stuff was accomplished. And what he gave 10 points. First one, this is Medvedev. Critical infrastructure of the nuclear fuel cycle appears to have been unaffected. The enrichment of nuclear material, and now we can say it outright, future production of nuclear weapons will continue. I say worse yet, and because it's not in this list, is that the IAEA is no longer going to be able to get into Iran, and Iran isn't going to be a part of it anyway, because we have totally destroyed the IAEA. Nonsense. A number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their own nuclear warheads. Israel is under attack. U.S. is entangled in a new conflict. Iran's political regime has survived. The people are rallying around the country's spiritual leadership. Donald Trump, once hailed as the president of peace, has now been pushed into another war. That it's over now. So this was the same day. The vast majority of countries around the world oppose the actions of Israel and the United States. And at this rate, Trump should forget about the Nobel Peace Prize, not even with how rigged it has become. And then he says, what a way to kick things off, Mr. President. Congratulations. Mr. Medvedev also had, and I want to read this. I see that my brother has joined us. Hello, Matthew.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Good. I can hear you just fine. I just want to make sure you're transmitting. I got one article I want to read, so if you'll give me just
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a funny article, and I saw a funny little show about it in Russian today, and then I found this article in English, because I did try to find the post that they were talking about, and I haven't been able to find it. I even looked on VK, Vkontakte, where it's like Facebook Russia, where I'm a member over there too, and I follow Dmitry Medvedev because he's always full of this stuff. Here's what he said today. The headline of the article is "Yapping Bitches in Brussels, a direct threat to Russia," he says. The European Union has emerged as a hostile force to Moscow, former President Dmitry Medvedev says, accusing the bloc of arming a neo-Nazi Kiev regime to attack Russia. In a Telegram post Wednesday, Medvedev stated that the old EU as an economic union has essentially ceased to exist, and its form is now perverted to no less of a threat to Russia than NATO. He accuses them of combining, which basically they have. You know, one is speaking for the other these days. It doesn't make any difference. The other quotes: Brussels today is Russia's true enemy. Slowly but surely, the EU is transforming itself into a self-sustaining military bloc that will gradually come to compete with NATO itself. Brusselian cockroaches, he's tough, he's a rough guy, and narrow-minded leaders of EU countries are advancing their military strategy based on an imaginary Russian threat and are ushering in a new era of rearmament. According to him, the goal is to arm Kiev to the point where it becomes invulnerable to Russia, claiming Brussels is ramping up its military industrial output and building military factories on Ukrainian soil. Quite true, by the way. The EU, he said, is sending personnel to train Ukrainian militants so that they can kill Russian citizens and carry out terrorist attacks, he said. He also accused Brussels of brazenly using profits from Russia's own assets to finance these vile activities. His other quote: the EU, stuffed with weapons, rainbow freaks, and yapping bitches in Brussels, constitutes a direct threat to Russia. This, of course, will not hinder our bilateral cooperation with individual European states. In his post, Medvedev proposed two outcomes for Ukraine. Either the EU itself realizes that it doesn't need the Kiev quasi-state at all, or better, there is no state left at all to join the EU. Now, Medvedev was president. He's younger than Putin, and I'm telling you, this is a guy who could probably step in and fill the shoes. Now, if you think you got it bad with Vladimir Putin, who is a very thoughtful, I don't want to call, I don't know that he's a decent man, but he's definitely thoughtful. He's absolutely constant. He says what he means. He's direct, and he is constant, consistent. He has been saying the same things for at least 20 years. Back in 2007, when the Munich Security Conference took place, and he was there speaking, and he gave a direct smack in the face straight to the Munich Security Council and the was it still Bush back then, Matt? I think it was. He punched him right. He punched him right in the face with all that, and Vice President Cheney was sitting right there, and he said the exact same things back then that he says today. So, like him or not, the guy is steady. He is well spoken and not rude, not threatening. Very, I guess, lack of a better word, presidential. Medvedev, not so much. Not so much. So look out what you're asking for with regime change in Russia, because it's just as likely you end up with somebody worse. Matt, I'm very glad you're with me. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well,
Appreciate it.
Good. I'm glad you're here. I have plenty of windows up that I could get into if you don't have anything concrete or definite. I don't know how much of my stuff you've heard. Most of it was Ukraine related, and you are certainly welcome to proceed where you'll go, and we'll just have a nice conversation. What do you think?
No, that sounds great. First of all, thanks for having me. And I've I think I told you when I first got on that first podcast that I've been looking for a way to give voice to all of these things that I had in my head about America, about American culture. And this has really done it. I've taken, as you know, a bunch of the podcasts and launched them on Podbean, I think is the name of it.
That's right.
As well, under Power of Truth Network.
Your Power of Truth Network, that's you?
Yep, that's me. I even launched even put my flag in there and everything. But cool. It's been good because I really wanted to get this stuff out there, and I think I'll probably end up making a few segments. I want to, as many people as want to be free in America, I think they're going to have a lot of information and know the truth. Having information isn't knowing the truth, and it certainly isn't acting on it. But I thought, what I thought I'd do is add maybe a couple of things to the news of the day before I get into. I have I have something prepared tonight. I don't know how.
You're always very well prepared, and I love that. And because sometimes I fly by the seat of my pants, but usually I'll have a number of topics to ease into. And like on my screen right now, I got at least 15 windows up there that we could get to if we get bored or we don't have anywhere to go. So I will let you control whatever you want to control, and I won't be quiet. I'm not going away. I will hopefully add something to your conversation, and I'll let you run. Go ahead.
All right. So I've got about 4 or 5 stories, maybe 6. First is the Democratic leadership told Representative Jasmine Crockett that she's too black.
Is that right?
She's too black to move forward and get.
Isn't she from Texas? Is that the girl from Texas?
Yeah, she's from Texas. So, she was withdrawing from the race for the top Democratic spot on the House Oversight Committee. And according to the article that I saw on MSN, which, as you know, is very left, she delivered the kind of truth Democratic leadership desperately needed to hear but refused to acknowledge, quote unquote.
Well, she's. I've heard her a few times, and she's rough, man. She's a rough woman, and and I don't care. More power to her. If people will elect you, good for you. And
here's the real story. Here's the real story. Now here's her quote. She said it was clear by the numbers, in other words, she wasn't going to get the votes, that my style of leadership is not exactly what they were looking for. So here is the person who wrote the article, Christopher Boozy, right? So he thinks that he should be able to translate this. Again, this goes back to what I was saying in one of my previous podcasts about what is truth here. Here's what he says. Let me translate what she couldn't say publicly. The Democratic Party just told one of its most effective warriors that she's too black, too bold, and too uncompromising for leadership. Did you catch that? They're like accusing them of being racist. Because they just said, no, you don't have, she said she didn't have the votes. So the real question here is, how do parties operate? Again, I'm going to take the standpoint of I'm somebody living in Australia, friendly to the United States, or even Norway or whatever. I want to know that the process in America is going to have as an output people that can lead. Here's what I mean by that. They're leaders, but they tell the truth and they act in a moral way when they're governing. In other words, moral government is doing things for the right reason.
Or for the right people, but for the right
people, the right reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, running money through USAID and laundering it all over the world for crazy causes that go against America is not moral government, and it's not telling the truth. Right? As an example. So this goes back to the Democrat Party, where the biggest problem is that they have been manipulating elections for a long time. A long time. And back in the day when Kennedy was running for president, the Mayor Daley here in Chicago, he said that he is responsible for giving the state of Illinois to Kennedy, which helped him win the primaries, right? So, again, it's manipulation, who's doing what, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, second news article is Pritzker launches campaign for third term.
Good old Pritzker. Isn't he? Didn't you tell me he's a billionaire? I knew he was rich.
Oh, yeah. His family's a billionaire. If you go downtown, you know where the Bean is in Chicago?
I do.
That park right next to there, Millennium Park, is the big, like, outdoor amphitheater and all that area. It was funded by the Pritzker family.
Wow.
Okay. So.
Well, that's how you get to be mayor of Chicago. Or governor, governor of Illinois. Yeah.
Governor, well, look at how, and this goes back to I have a policy of no, and I talked to Mark Kennedy about this when he was on the show. I do not want anyone in office more than 2 terms.
No, me neither.
And I think, especially as we start looking at, and I believe this is going to take place, and I want to do a podcast on ideas for a bright future.
You think it's going to take place? I don't. I've been trying for a while. I've been following other efforts for a while, and they just never get off the ground. And the reason is because the people holding the power don't want that. They only want that for people like Trump. They want it for the president. But if it's good enough for the president, isn't it good enough for everyone in government?
Well, you got a good point, because we do have a lot of oligarchs on the left and on the right. Mm-hmm. But this is different in that we are going through the fourth turning, like the generational turnings, right? So, yeah. I've got an episode I'm going to do on this, but every 4 generations or so, we have a major pivot in the world. So.
Are we due?
And that we're due. This is the fourth. We're in the fourth turning now.
Oh.
So think back to the Revolutionary War. 4 generations later was the Civil War. 4 generations later was World War II. We are now at the 4th one after that. So.
World War III, baby.
Well, I don't even know that it means war. So we've got several things happening at once. we've got the fourth industrial revolution, and this is a little bit of a sideways thing, but sideways discussion. But we've got the fourth industrial revolution, which is AI.
Mhm.
We've also got, that big arc we were talking about from Ray Dalio, where we're talking about the rise and fall of nations, where there is a struggle over what America's future was going to be. And you may remember that the globalists, i.e., Bush 1, Clinton, Bush 2, Obama, and Biden, all five of them were pro-globalist because they're like, America's going to decline. So they were just spending. It's the kind of thing you do when you know you're going to file bankruptcy. You're just
Sure.
like, I'll just spend whatever, do whatever. Let whatever happen, right, and benefit my family and friends who are going to live on. But where this is going is that all these are happening at the same time, while we are also in the middle of a fog, as it were, on what is truth. Not just what is truth, but you have to know the truth, but then determine what's right and wrong on top of it. So when you say, we haven't had these, I think the ideas for a bright future are really going to say, what would a structure look like if we were to upgrade the Constitution or upgrade our society here? What would it look like to prevent these sort of things from happening again? And we'll hear people say, oh, well, you need socialism and you need all this stuff. That's nonsense. It's because they've been taught like that. And by the way, the next time I have a guest, it will be about socialism, right? And
I did last night a little bit on communism. I've got more, but I talked a little bit about communism and some of its origins and the intentions behind it, which were noble but flawed, And so I kind of have the same sorts of feelings about other methods of government, but I'm also more of I don't trust any government. Once it gets in there, it corrupts itself. It's always on the way to corruption. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I kind of look at it from that point of view. Anyway, I like what you're saying. Keep going.
Well, that leads me into the third, I guess, story tonight. A wingsuit kid dies. Now, who's the wingsuit kid? Got a young man. He's Scottish. Name is Liam Burna. And I don't know if he's related to the Burna, that pepper gun that they sell in the U.S. That family. But anyway, he died during an 8,000-foot base jump in the Swiss Alps. So for unknown reasons, he deviated from his flight path and struck a rocky outcrop. Now, I've seen some of those ones off of what's the name of that place in France where they jump? A couple of guys have died doing that sort of thing.
It's some scary stuff, man.
Well, and my only point in bringing up this one is, life can be fun, but anything, so here's my view, right? Any recreational activity where the failure mode is death is not a recreational activity, right? It's not something that should be done. Why? Because I believe that life is precious. And even if your life sucks, there's something to learn from it. In fact, probably learn more when life sucks. But
those suits have been I don't know, they're proven, but was it the spot where he jumped? Was it because people do those wingsuits all the time?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not here to trash the wingsuit. The wingsuit itself, I mean, you can see those guys. They really do work, and you pull the chute and all that stuff. However,
but there's no backup. I mean,
it's unnecessary. No, there isn't a backup.
There's nothing.
Remember, they're trying to get low to the ground. If you get, they're coming in there at high rate of speed. And they hit those little outcropping of rocks.
And then they're done. Yeah, that's
That's
the
it.
end of the.
You're done.
That's a total end of the game.
Right.
I've seen some of those on because all these guys are wearing GoPros. So his death will be on GoPro for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll see what his was like. Fourth news item was Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood loses Supreme Court battle. I don't know if you've seen this. Where
no, I haven't yet, but I'm very interested.
Yeah. So the Supreme Court said that the states do not have to fund or include Planned Parenthood in Medicaid.
Good.
So now that they've been propped up. Here's a company that's talk about corporate embedding with politics, right? And ideology. Here's a company that has been propped up by the Democrat Party for 40 years.
Well, Republicans
extra money
too.
given. What's that?
Republicans too.
Oh yeah, Republicans too. They have their favorite corporations, but I think that's good. Why? Because one, we can't afford it as Americans to fund every little project that comes along in a company where they think they've got something. Two, we need to see that these companies are not promoted, right? That they're not like access isn't granted in some kind of special privilege for all of these things. So I think the courts don't just interpret law anymore. And this is the problem. They don't just interpret law anymore. They're now having to adjudicate morality. Now,
boy, don't get me started on that topic. I will go on for days.
Well, and the reason I say it in this one, because we shouldn't be put in this predicament to have this be considered a moral issue, right? It's really something that Americans should say, we're going to separate these corporations from our politics. But anyway, we also have a news article on socialist wins mayoral primary in New York. Now,
yeah, I saw that.
Did you see some of the Democrats freaking out?
Yeah.
I
thought they were all for that, though.
Yeah, I've for the longest time I've called the Democrat Party the Democrat Socialists. Why? Because everything that party pushes is for more money for the poor, more social programs, more this. It's socialism. That's what they've been pushing for. So I don't know if this opposition within the party is kind of a fake balance, a fake, oh yeah, we've got to, stand up to this, and then go, well, but the people want it, I guess,
Yeah, but wasn't this against Cuomo though?
It was against Cuomo. It was just in the primary. So what you have now,
but Cuomo he's not as loved as he thought, and I think that most of what happened was, Jesus, can we just get somebody else, please? Why do we, people? I think it might not be as much pro-socialist candidate as it is anti-Cuomo candidate.
I agree. There is an element of that, but look what happened. Did you see that Eric Adams, the guy who is kind of pro-Trump?
Yeah.
The Democrat who had the problem with the Turkish Airlines, he announces a re-election campaign as an independent now. So he's the sitting mayor, and his quote is that there's no dignity in socialism. I don't know.
I don't think they're going to keep him around. I don't see it.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how the Democrats handle this. They are fragmented.
But New York is all jacked up anyway.
Most of America is.
Well, that's true.
So this brings us to maybe the last news article is that, I don't know if you saw this a couple of weeks back, but the graduates at Harvard, 13 graduates at Harvard, didn't graduate. They didn't get diplomas.
Why not?
The school withheld the diplomas. And
Withheld because
they had participated in a pro-Palestinian encampment on the campus where they blocked doors
because
and all
of
that
Trump.
stuff.
Because of Trump.
Well, yeah, that's the only reason they're doing it is for funding. Wait a minute, let me take that back. That was rude. Why are they doing this? So there were, I think, 150 something of the faculty that went to the Board of Regents of Harvard. And they had a big meeting, and they said, we want those kids to have their diplomas. The Board of Regents voted and said no. Right?
Wow.
So think about that for a minute. And let's say it was for like altruistic or really like genuine reasons. Why wasn't it there before? And if it wasn't there before, who awakened them to that? Was it Trump?
Has to be, because otherwise these kids would have been notified a year ago.
Yeah, they would have. They would have.
Do they get all their money back? Do they get, can they transfer their credits to somewhere else and get a diploma? I mean, what do you get?
Think about BYU, where you have to have and other schools like Notre Dame and the real other like Liberty University, where you have to have ecclesiastical endorsement.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that Harvard was a school for and it still is, where you can go get your doctorate in religious theology, right? That's what it used to be. There's the old church is still there on the campus. So my only point in bringing that up is that where's the moral shift? Where's the cause for that shift? Was it Trump? Or is it?
Well, it has to be Trump. What else could it be?
If it is indeed a moral shift, it has to be Trump. Now, let's go down the other path.
It's not a moral shift. It's a money shift.
Okay, so that's the other path. If it's a money shift, it was still Trump. So I guess we're saying...
Well, it's absolutely a money shift. Why else would they shift? It has to be money.
I mean, we've got the Board of Regents standing up to all of the faculty, which is pretty impressive. I mean, it's either money or morals. So then we're going to talk a little bit more about that tonight. I got some content. So finally, a personal experience here. I'm deployed to Iraq in March of 2003. I'm literally on the last airplane out of Fort Campbell. And for those of you who've never been on a deployment for war, the U.S. government hires private airlines and contracts them to just, all they do is turn after turn after turn, 30, 40, 747s running 24/7 moving troops. And they're also running Air Force. All the Air Force stuff is tasked with moving equipment, right? And it's these massive deployments where you've got 100,000 troops and all their equipment and, these kind of things. So I was tasked. I was a pilot, but I was also the property book officer for the 8th Battalion, 101st. And I was also the nuclear, biological, chemical warfare officer for the battalion. Mm-hmm. And that meant that I had to have masks for everybody. But what happened is because there was, I don't want to say there was a shortage of masks, but what you discover when you deploy is that all of a sudden, everybody who said their mask fit, you now need, let's say you need 1,000 larges, you now have 900 larges, and you have excess mediums and this kind of thing. So everybody's shifting equipment around. In the meantime, you can't deploy people to theater if they don't have all the right equipment. Except for, in this case, we did deploy, everybody else deployed, I should say, without full body armor. Yours truly went out in the civilian sector and purchased some level 4 body armor. because I'm like, I got a duty to my family. I'm going to come home alive. Anyway, so we get over there. I arrive like March 3rd. Sometime before the war happens, I think like sometime in the middle of March. I don't remember the exact dates. We got a kid so I'm in Camp Udari, and all these are in Kuwait. They're right on the border. We're amassing troops on the border to move into Iraq. And so I'm at Camp Udari, which is pretty close to the border. Camp New York is right next to us. They've got Camp Phoenix and a bunch of other stuff. I think Phoenix was one of them, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, long and short of it is, we wake up to the news of this kid who, and we're in these massive tents that sleep, I don't know, maybe 50, 60 people.
I remember those.
And yeah. And these tents, like everybody's just lined up against each wall. Well, this guy wakes up early in the morning, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, if I remember the story correct, pulls out a grenade, throws it in the tent, right? Kills 11 people from his unit, right? And you know, the question there, or the point that I'm bringing up, not himself. He's apprehended and thrown in the brig, as they like to say.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened there? Well, we can say, oh, the kid went crazy. Well, why didn't he throw the grenade across the border then? These kinds of things, right? You just don't know how people are going to act. Was he Muslim? Was he this? Was he that? There were all kinds of questions. My point in bringing that up is that regardless of which news article we go through, there's always a moral component. If he really believed he was stopping the Americans, right, by killing 11 random people, or if he thought he was fighting for something, why did he deploy in the first place? Why was he even in the army? Or was this his purpose, right? Or why didn't he just defect over to the other side and actually make some real damage if he thought he could? In any case, I think it's an act of cowardice, but it kind of goes into some of what I want to talk about. And I think, like, if you think back to a moment in your life when you accomplish something that you're truly proud of, like, just think about that for a minute. Maybe it was graduating, maybe it was finishing a marathon, or you overcame an addiction, or maybe starting a business, right? If you're the listener out there, it could be anything. Maybe it was saving your marriage, or maybe walking away from it, right? Maybe that was your accomplishment. Right? Think about it. Think about what that took. Now, in the business that I do, in the consulting that I do a lot of business consulting. I say that it takes at least 8 things to build a product, right? And it takes, and they start with the letter M, so I can remember them, and I still can't remember them half the time. But it takes manpower, machinery, a method, materials, management, Mother Nature, money, a meeting of the minds, and some other M I can't remember. No, I guess that is 8. That is 8. That is the 8 M's. So, do you remember the process of what it was that you accomplished? Like, think about it. It wasn't just a physical grind. You had to think differently. You had to mentally push through the doubt, the self-doubt, the doubt of others. You had to feel differently. You had to rise above your fear, your frustration, or your pain. And somewhere deep down, like, you had to believe in yourself, believe in a purpose, or believe in something that was driving you. And you talked a little bit about this when we were talking about the ideas for a future. And you're like, I don't believe that people would do that, would help change things dramatically in America. I think they would, given the right circumstances, right? Like, we saw a lot of people rise to the occasion in World War II. and there was a lot of turmoil just beforehand. So that victory, that success, it wasn't just physical. It was the physical, the mental, the spiritual, and the emotional in that order. Why that order? So when you're born, you're physically born. The first thing that happens when you start to be aware of yourself and your brain is developing, and there's I think it's called myelin, I think, that starts to connect all the cells and stuff together. You start to get a picture of, you start to wake up in this world. That's mental. So first you're physical, you actually exist. The next thing that happens is that you know you exist. And the third thing that happens is you have this kind of moral and then emotional, I would maybe call it spiritual and moral, and then this emotional connection. You've got your mom, you've got your brothers and sisters, you've got your favorite toys, yada, yada. So when we talk about success, it's always whole person success. There's always elements to it. I was physically this way, mentally that way, morally or spiritually this way, and then emotionally, here's how things were. When we think about failure, we think about it the same way. So the world might measure your body, they might measure your bank account or your grades, like we're talking about the kids at Harvard or any of these people, or about the lady being too black, right? They're measuring physical appearance or whatever. But we all know better. It's a total package. If you want to do something, be something. And it absolutely takes all four parts of you. Body, mind, heart,
yeah, but
soul.
if you want to be something, I would say know somebody.
Well, that's part of the emotional. That's part, because relationships fall under the emotional, but you're right.
Yeah, but if you don't know somebody, you're not going to be somebody for the most part. It happens.
Well,
but
think about it.
You know, like you always talk about with the Bushes and with the families of power, we know where they are. And for a couple of guys like us, we grew up in a family of where 12 children were born. We grew up where we knew that our parents didn't have the money to ship us off to college. If you were going to make something, you were on your own. And I don't mean that badly at all. We had a good life, good parents.
Well, that proves it, right? Look what you did. Look.
Yeah, it proves that, well, you too. And most of our brothers and sisters were reasonably successful, some extremely successful. And there's craziness going on. Did you see that post about Sue today being over in whatever
she's
country
over there
was with her husband
in Africa, over there with Doctors Without Borders.
Yeah, that's crazy. But good for her, you know.
Yeah, think about this though.
Yeah, but if we knew somebody, perhaps if we knew somebody, was my point, is where you were going, that if we knew somebody that could take us by the hand when we leave the nest of the family of, too many kids where our parents couldn't pay, and we knew the right person that could lead us to
I think
Harvard University and pay for everything.
Look at your success, though. Look at your
I don't have any, Matt. I'm
Come on.
I got nothing.
Think about it. You left the house. You became a lawyer. Well, first of all, you were a translator, right? Mm-hmm. And by the way,
but that's just the Army. I mean,
we all just the Army. We think about it this way. We all have successes. We may not be to where we want to be, but this is what I'm talking about this. Because every one of these pillars in America, body, mind, soul, heart, they're under attack today in America. And some of these political parties, some of these power structures, some of the way we operate, operate.
The government,
but we allow it.
Tool by a lot of government operators, whether they're the guy sitting, and I know you know this, you were in the Army. Did you ever go into the supply sergeant, and the supply sergeant had a sign on his door that said something along the lines of, your failure to plan does not create my emergency? and
Yeah.
you had an emergency you didn't create, but it's something you need right now. And basically it was, sorry, I don't care that I'm only a sergeant and you're a staff sergeant. Go sit over there. When I get to you, I will. And so that is the little mini fiefdoms, which
Yeah,
are,
I used to call them the little kingdoms that the people
well, exactly.
set
They're
up
the
for
little
themselves.
kingdoms that they set up, and they don't do crap. And those
Yeah.
are everywhere in the military, in the government, in the state government, in your city water department, in everywhere where you
Well, that's
cannot
why-
be touched. You can't be touched. You won't be
Exactly.
fired. You have these little kingdoms that you sit and you are there and you control whether or not somebody gets a drive-through at their Zesto restaurant, because you don't want the Zesto restaurant or the guy that owns the Zesto restaurant. You want the bank that has come to you on the side and wants the exact same thing, but wants it in that location.
So
And
you're
that's,
not
of course,
wrong. You're not
That's-
wrong. We're definitely going to talk about corruption at some point. However,
well,
I want
it's
to
a
talk
topic,
about the
for sure.
yeah, for sure. I want to go into some stats here, because what I want to come out of on this is that I want to show people, I want to encourage people to go out and actually change their environment. Everything you said is 100% correct. But I don't want them to go, yeah, I'm just going to get stopped by the guy at City Hall, or, oh, crap, our government sucks. I'm just going to stay at home and get fat and think bad thoughts and go out and then decide to kill everybody in a parade.
Or a grenade in a
grenade in a
GP
tent,
large,
right?
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So let's I'm going to go through some stats, and I know I've only got about 35 minutes left, so I'm going to try to peel through these. Think about this. Let's talk about physical health. Obesity. 42% of American adults are obese, right? That means a BMI of above 30. Now, I can neither confirm nor deny that I fit into this group, but I will say it's not looking good. But anyway, 71% of Americans are overweight or obese. That's up. That's up quite a bit from the 1960s, right?
Definitely.
In addition to that, we've got testosterone declined.
Yeah,
It drops by 1% per year average. Since
across the board?
Across the
you mean?
board, young and old.
So we're all becoming women?
Yep, that's why.
Oh
so
my
if you
God,
wanna
it's
know
true.
If you want to know why everybody's
no.
trans, right? It's because our testosterone's gone, right? So think about this. It's gone down about 20 to 40% overall. That's from a report in Reuters.
Is that right?
Testosterone prescriptions have tripled between 2001 and 2011, right?
I have friends who swear by that stuff, and so far,
well,
I have elected not to do it. I recently
I'll tell you,
bought
go
a supplement of some sort that is allegedly a natural replacement, and I'm going to try it for a little bit, because as you get older, you're supposed to do something. But I'm anti-drug. You know what I mean? I'm just
trying
herbs and things like that. I'll try, but I don't want to be injected. I don't want to do any. I don't like that stuff. So.
Well,
but I'll keep you posted if
we can get into that. But we can get into that, because I used
Yeah.
to buy a lot of these replacements. In fact, even when I was in Ukraine, I bought a lot of these testosterone replacements, thanks to my thyroid problems.
I got those too.
But that brings up the next point with physical is our pharma reliance. We have 5% of the world population, but we consume about 65 to 70% of global pharmaceuticals. You know what I would do if I was Russia or China and I wanted to stop the US? I'd just cut off the pharmaceutical supply.
Mm-hmm.
Watch everybody die or eat themselves alive with other things. So, but that's just on the physical side. Let's talk about mental and emotional health. Suicide among youth, ages 10 to 24, suicide rates rose 62%. In other words, they went from 6.8 to 11.0 per 100,000 from 2007 to 2021.
Oh my God! Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So the homicide Homicide rose 60%.
I thought that was on its way down. Are they lying about that crap? I saw several
remember,
reports
these are
in the last year that say it's gone down across the board in most places.
Right. This is overall. So you're not wrong. It is going down now, but before the last year, there were a lot of rises and it was peaking.
Mm-hmm.
Think about this though. Suicide rose 60% from 2014 to 2021. So overall, U.S. national suicide rate rose from 10 per 100,000 in 2000 to 14.3 per 100,000 in 2022. That's the highest since 1941. We had almost 50,000 suicides in 2022. 50,000. Right.
Wow.
So, and let's take a look at this. Again, teen mental health, more than one in 3 girls, like 1.3, something like that, has seriously considered suicide. Now, remember, these are teen girls.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody up to the age of 18, from 13 to 18. So let's look at social and moral decline. Gun violence and youth trauma, right? We had an uptick in gun violence and trauma. 50% of teens worry about school shootings. And then we had black teen gun suicide rates for the first time in 2022 surpassed white teens. And they rose dramatically among Latino and Asian youth. Right? So violent crime spiked up during the 2020 pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And still the U.S. homicide rate, for as far as violent crime goes, is 7 times higher than many of the other developed nations that we would consider part of the Western Alliance. These Western countries that we all know and love, like UK, Germany, etc., France. So why is that important? Because here's the impacts on U.S. economy. First of all, we have productivity loss. Mental health disorders, that means depression, anxiety, etc., cost the U.S. over $200 billion a year in lost productivity. So we're trying to outcompete our peers and China with half our brains tied behind our back, right? We've got absenteeism, burnout, and we've got
nobody wants to work. Nobody
wants to work. We've got what we call presenteeism, which is working while impaired. We've got chronic illness and obesity reduce the physical stamina and mental clarity, leading to errors, delays, early retirements. So what happens when half of your workforce is sick, depressed, or emotionally numb? You get economic drift. No innovation. I wouldn't say no, but your innovation is stifled. The sense of urgency, like you said, people don't want to work. And the lack of resilience. You say something to someone, hey, can I have that paper by Wednesday? Well, man, I can't handle that.
And they all cry.
Right? So,
oh my God, a deadline.
And by the way, not to make light of this if you're one of those people, but I'm trying to show how can a country live like this? So let's go on to healthcare costs. U.S. healthcare spending was $4.5 trillion a year. That's 18% of our GDP, more than any other nation.
Oh, no.
90% of that is on chronic preventable diseases. A heart disease is preventable. Diabetes preventable. Obesity preventable. So
and all connected.
All connected to sugar, I might add. I was going to throw a quote in there. I was going to have you play a quote from one of the guys, but
wouldn't it be what the heck's his name? Kennedy?
Well, Kennedy says a lot of them, but there's a lot of doctors out there saying it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about this, so here's big pharma out there. They're profiting while the system. Now, I don't want to blame this on the system.
Everybody does have their own individual responsibility in this, but I also
But I will
understand that it's hard to get out of when it starts at birth. Basically,
well, yeah,
they're doing this stuff to you.
you're pumped full of all kinds of things, right? And chemicals in our food. But let's look at another impact. So we talked, well, before I move on from healthcare costs, right? We talk about big pharma. Americans spend more per person on healthcare than any country on the planet, and we still have the lowest life expectancy among our peers.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, I've known that one for a while.
Yeah, healthy we are not. But let's talk about the labor force collapse.
You're on your own. And when you go to a doctor, the doctor's answer is always, here's a bottle of pills. Here's your bottle of pills. Bless you, my son.
They don't even know how to actually really doctor.
I disagree with that, but I think they know, but they're tied to the same thing, the same sort of system where they get funding, they get money, their hospital gets this. And
well, they may know, but they don't do it. Let me give you an example. So I had never been in this amount of pain in my entire life, but I tore my rotator cuff, didn't know it. I went to 11 different doctors, including multiple urgent cares and sports medicine. I went to an emergency room. Not once did a doctor in those 11 times actually x-ray my arm, do a MRI, and find the problem. In every instance, they tried to just give me medications. 11 times. Several of those doctors never even touched me or looked at my arm. Right? That's the state of where we are.
They came in and they quizzed you and then said, here's some drugs.
Yep, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so labor force collapse. We were talking about testosterone and fertility. If we have falling testosterone and fertility, that means we've got fewer workers in future generations. Mm-hmm. I know it sounds kind of...
Which means you got to open the borders and tear down that wall.
Yeah. We've got record high...
Speaking of the wall, Pink Floyd tomorrow night.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to that, by the way. I hope you... I hope you play.
I think it'll be some fun. I got quite the lineup. Anyway, I'm very sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No worries. So we've got record high rates of disability claims, both physical and psychological claims, especially post 2020 during the pandemic. Many men are opting out of the labor force completely. Working age males are not participating in the workforce. Now, I don't know how people do this. I wish I could be one of those guys. But we're not just short on workers. We're short on men who feel strong, capable, and needed. Period. Right? And by the way, in this episode, I'm not going through and talking about the war on men that the Democrat Party waged on men in order to boost women's lib, and then pulled the carpet out from underneath the women by saying that men could be women if they just put on a dress.
Yeah.
Right.
Why didn't they start that in the 70s?
Yeah.
You want to be a woman? Fine. Everybody's a woman. And then so all these women get to go out and fight for their right to party. And then the party is stolen by men who found out that they can run, swim, and punch and wrestle better than women.
It's just so crazy.
It
is literally crazy. But anyway, I'm going to go through. I'm going to show 3 or 4 more effects and talk about why this matters. And then I know we're going to be short on time, bumping up against the clock. But
but we can stop for a second and go on. If you do wish to go on, we could stop and then continue. But that's up to you.
But how would that still record that way? Would we just splice them together?
Yeah, I already have a second one lined up, or we can continue this one and just let it record. But and there's a way to do it. I'll figure it out.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, then I won't go too quick then. So
I don't want you to feel rushed, and we're not necessarily in a rush, but I'll probably at the minute of the closing of the 10:30, or I will cut it off and then. But it'll be a fake.
Restart if we need
It'll be a fake break, basically, and then
okay.
we'll just start again. Or I'll say it's the end of the show, blah blah blah, and then we'll start over.
Oh, okay.
But we don't hang up. We don't.
Listeners at home, listeners at home don't have to do anything. Okay, good.
That's right.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. So, what we've got, as kind of a another effect of this, we've got a rising dependency on the state. Think about it. So widespread emotional and financial fragility leads to a couple of different things. One, increased use of government subsidies like SNAP, SSDI, Medicaid, and greater reliance on pharmaceutical and welfare systems to function. So it creates a vicious cycle where people feel disempowered. The more disempowered they feel, the more dependency they have. The more dependency they have, the more control the government does have. So
now it's no longer an embarrassing situation like and I hate to bring up, TV or movies in this, but the movie was the boxer guy who in the Depression, played by Russell Crowe, whatever the movie was.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
And he went and he had to go during there and get like food stamps or support from the government to help feed his family. And he felt very embarrassed about it. And when he won the championship, he gave the money back. Well, people aren't embarrassed anymore. That is, they are entitled instead of.
Oh, they have no shame.
And you know what? I don't mean to say that people always should be shamed, because sometimes you have situations in life where you have to do what you got to do, and probably every one of us have been there once in a while, and hopefully you don't resort to crime in order to survive. Nobody wants that either. And so it's but I can see, and I have seen, a vicious cycle. The only other point I would make in that regard is you remember things like the very popular disease that everybody had in the early 2000s was fibromyalgia. You don't hear about it at all anymore. You don't hear anything about it. And there were people who had everybody was bipolar for a period of time. You'd hear about something and everybody's bipolar, and they're all getting bipolar drugs. And the fibromyalgia people were just, oh geez, it's a pain, and I'm lethargic, and I'm this and I'm that. And I'm not saying they're fake, but you don't hear about them anymore. Where'd they go? And you don't hear, oh, she's bipolar. Everybody was bipolar for several years.
Oh, yeah. Well, back in, and I think that might be kind of how they do these medical fads where, so when my thyroid failed, one of the things that I voiced to my practitioner was, well, I'm starting to notice my emotions a lot more. I'm starting to have mood swings. And the first thing this lady thought was, whoa, he's bipolar. Well, how does she know I just wasn't completely emotionally dead before, and now I'm aware of these emotions, right? I was never diagnosed bipolar, and I'm thankful for that, because I think it would have been a travesty of like medical care. But what was interesting to me is the quantity and, I would say, magnitude of the drugs that they started pumping at me just because my thyroid had failed. They could have just like dialed in my thyroid like any normal doctor would do, which they tried, and they were having a little bit of complications there. But long and short of it is, it goes back to, hey, you've got a problem, I've got a pill. And like at some point, and this is where I agree with RFK, and why I was very pleased that he was brought into Trump's cabinet, we got to get to the root of this. Why don't we figure out why people are having autoimmune disorders that make them have thyroid problems in the first place? So, but the big point here on this rising dependency on the state is that a sick population doesn't fight back. It signs up for another pill, another check, another leash, right? And even if they were to fight back, because of the way that we perceive things, we think posting on Facebook is rebellion. I'm going to post against the government, whether it's Trump or Biden or whoever, right? But there's other impacts on this. So when we look at like impacts on the social fabric, think about the breakdown of the family. You've got divorce, absentee fathers, and cohabitation without commitment. Those are all on the rise. Children growing up in chaotic or emotionally unsafe homes. These kids are more likely to suffer mental illness, and they're more likely to join gangs, abuse substances, drop out. I remember a video, maybe a year and some change ago, of this 18-year-old girl in Santa Fe, New Mexico, that went viral. And she basically here's the deal. She had been in the system, so she had no parents, so she was in foster care. She had what they call aged out. So she was 18. She had just turned 18 a few months before, if I remember correctly, the story. So the system basically said, hey, you're 18. See ya. Go on your own. So they had put her up in a hotel for a little while. She had her stuff in a bag, and she called the social worker, and she wouldn't leave the social worker's car. She's like, hey, I have nowhere to go. Please don't leave me here, right? So the social worker does what anybody in that position would do. She called the cops to have this girl extracted from her car, which they did. And the girl ended up fighting, and then they arrested her, and she got a free night stay in the jail instead. Why do I bring that up? The epic failure of this system because of physical, mental, moral, emotional failures. Think about the cost, right? We spend anywhere from $65,000 to $80,000 a year per single mother, right, in America. And when you look at the magnitude of this, it's like, do we really want to, like, we need to wake up. Do we really want to live this way? This poor girl. Now I'm sympathetic to the girl here. Think about the system. We spent all this time, the Democrats spent all this time putting in all these social welfare systems. Again, socialism. Put in all these systems, and at the end of the day, they got to kick this girl out of the car because why? She still doesn't have money. She physically has nowhere to live. She hasn't been trained in anything. She has no moral upbringing, right? Emotionally, she's got no one. She's traumatized and psychologically lacking. Now what's she supposed to do when she gets out of that car? She's going to somehow go down and run for mayor and do all these great things, or go volunteer in Zimbabwe, Doctors Without Borders stuff. No, that type of person is going to be dependent for the rest of their lives on somebody or something, or she's going to be bouncing in and out of all kinds of, government structures like prisons, youth houses, all of these sorts of things. So, I mean, this is a much bigger problem. So when we talk about like crime, violence, and moral disorder, where does it come from? Like youth violence, gun suicides, and school shootings, they're a sign of this deeper decay. It's not just policy failure. We think we're going to legislate morality. No, you had that chance way back in the day when you already destroyed the fabric of the family and the fabric of what America stood for. Right? And
Well,
people want
definitely true.
Well, they want the government to come in. The problem is you have no family left because you bought into the Democrat Party principles. Right? You got no family. The wives don't know how to wife. The husbands have been beat down and told they're worthless for so long that they don't even want to try, right? The kids, they're taught to rebel against the parents, and thanks to the Clintons, they can actually divorce their parents, or maybe they're trans. So what do we have here, right? And again, it goes back to physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. So, but a nation without strong families has no future. Just feelings, trends, distractions. Yeah, I got these causes where I'm going to go help this girl. And I'm going to go up to Capitol Hill and I'm going to say, we need another bill for girls who get kicked out of cars when they're 18. There needs to be a transition space. Oh, really? Why don't we just go back and fix the original problem, which is the fact that their families are non-existent. We have the lack of moral teachings, right? So, but you know, where are we in all this? We have over 50% of high schoolers report persistent sadness or hopelessness. It's not just sadness, it's meaninglessness. Like, what's it all for? So when we look at how that affects our community, let's think about the community for a minute. We've got this loneliness epidemic. You know that loneliness has the same health impact as smoking 15 cigarettes a day?
Really?
So, oh yeah. Now, I don't know what the stat is now, but America used to lose the equivalent of 3 747 loads of people per day as a result of smoking related deaths, right? That's a lot of people. Now, you didn't see us like spending $2 billion like we did on TSA, right? But we have a decline in things like church attendance, civic involvement. Where's the Lions Club? We don't have trust in these institutions. We have fragmentation, anxiety, and then we have radicalization. Like this guy who goes up to Minnesota, kills a couple of people, or this kid who goes and kills the United Healthcare CEO. People are cheering, right? Yeah. And so what people are turning to is these false communities. These are otherwise known as online echo chambers, right?
Yeah, they're idiots everywhere.
Well, and they turn to ideologies or to some kind of consumer identity. Check me out. I've got this, these $4,000 high heels or such and such. I'm part of this class structure. Well, you want to be, right? So, and the bottom line here is that without purpose, people will cling to anything that makes them feel something more of value, even if it poisons them, right? Look at food addictions. Now, I'm a classic case of this because I love food, right? And my body shows it, right? But look at the people that eat themselves into like 400, 600 pounds, right? Wow, that's a lot, right? That's definitely, and all of us are in that boat where we've got something we're turning to, whether it's alcohol, pornography addictions, whatever, right? We're trying to cope. So this leads us to what I would say is the spiritual weakness. And I want to quantify this because there's a kind of political slavery that's going on. So like a spiritually weakened people, they can't recognize tyranny or resist it. When the soul is asleep, the body can be enslaved quietly. Is how you say that. Moral relativism makes evil seem like just another perspective. Oh, well, Jeffrey Dahmer, yeah, he killed and ate all those people, But he was a
good neighbor.
He was a good neighbor. He used to help the lady across the street, with her groceries.
He shoveled snow. Good man.
Right. So, but so all of these things, when we're talking about physical, mental, spiritual, or emotional, there's always, because of the weakness, there's some kind of slavery happening. Do you notice that? Like on the physical side, we're now slaves to medical care and then the government, right? The mental side, again, medical care, government. Spiritual side, what do we have? Government ideologies by political systems. Again, a slave to whoever's in power. We just talked about it with Harvard. Why did they change? They don't feel anything. They're just like, look, we got money. Money's the most important thing.
Money
right?
Definitely is the most important thing.
And you 13 kids, people are going to forget about you in a couple of years.
Mm-hmm. And you'll figure it out. You'll get
you can go get a school. You can go to the local community college and get a degree there, right? So if you want to rule a people, you don't conquer them, numb them, break their spirit, make them forget.
Why did these people not get diplomas again? Because they participated in these
in these encampments, these pro-Palestinian encampments. So they would set up little tents and camps and crap on campus.
Yeah, but there were thousands of people doing that. How do you target 18 of them?
There's only 18. There were 13 that were trying to graduate.
Oh, the rest of them are not.
Yeah, some of the others weren't. Yeah, some of the others weren't necessarily even from Harvard.
I see.
Right. So why does all this matter? So again, this isn't just about being healthy. It's about being free. It means the effort to strengthen ourselves physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally it's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's patriotic, right? It's something that's going to strengthen the country. Like if we had China if we had China invade us today, how many people would be cheering? Yay, they're bringing socialism. They can help us. They got more money. We can get free food. Here's a free Obama phone, but it's from the Chinese. We can get the Huawei one. It's better. We would have people cheering. Yeah, well, look at the Palestinians, and I'm gonna rip on the Palestinians for a minute here. The Palestinians have been kicked out of every single Middle Eastern country they've been in. Why? For this same reason. They are a drain on the society whenever they get there. So think about this. During the first Gulf War, when Iraq invaded Kuwait, the Palestinians were on the street cheering. Here is a country who had let them in, given them free money and housing, let them be a part of their community. And they were out there cheering. Guess what happened when the Americans defeated Saddam Hussein? 27,000 Palestinians were deported and basically kicked in the butt on the way out and said, don't ever come back. Right? This is the kind of thing we're talking about. A moral bankruptcy that even if you are physically and mentally right and emotionally, this moral bankruptcy is a big problem. So that's why it matters in America. And again, we got people cheering on socialism and everything else, not realizing that it completely destroys the fabric of America. It just destroys the fabric of society. And we'll get into that because next week we got a guest who's going to talk a lot about socialism, and I don't want to ruin that. Okay, so.
Well, that's cool.
So one other note, right? So a weak population equals more government, equals more corruption, equals more compliance. Like you now have to have a stronger government. And we see that with Trump, where he's having to go, okay, we're going to have to pick these people up and carry them out and throw them across the border, right? That's just how it is. So that's important, right? And that's why we are where we are. We need, anyway, let's get into how to rebuild this, right? Have you guys
you're
ever
depressing me again. You're getting me all. I'm over here. I'm over here wishing I had been diagnosed with that bipolar, so I had some free stuff.
Yeah, and I know we're going to have to switch gears here in a little bit, so I'm glad we have the ability to just keep on recording because...
Yeah, what we'll do is, just because I want to stop it and use it as a different show if we tend to go a long time, is that at the appropriate time, I will say something, sign off, and then start up again. Only because I just want to have a break in there and say it's a different show so that I can record it differently. And then we can go another hour and a half if you want.
Okay, sounds good. Well,
I'm not.
Go ahead.
I got nothing tomorrow, But you know what? Why don't you go get prepared? I will. Of course, we got 5 minutes. I could.
I'm prepared. You just tell me when you want to cut it off because I'm about ready to go into this third segment. Well,
why don't you wait till after we get started on that? We got like 5 minutes. Maybe there's some new news I could throw out here.
Okay.
You're aware of the NATO summit where the old Zelensky goblin, the Green Goblin, showed up. Did you see that he wore something almost presentable when he met with the old Trumpster? He was wearing not only a black shirt, but a black coat over it. He wasn't wearing the green, geez, I'm going to the front lines any second now. He had on a black solid shirt and a jacket. So the last time when he appeared in Washington and when he appeared at the G7 meetings in Canada, he was beaten over that. And I've been saying it for a long time.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, I mean, and he deserved it, frankly.
Oh, he definitely deserves it. You don't show up and meet with the leader of the free world. I'd like to see the Green Goblin in a tie just once. He used to wear them all the time. When he was running for office, he wore them. Well,
I think he sees it as an important identity because he's trying to show my country's at war. I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, but everybody knows that. Did you hear the numbers I gave before you came on the show, perhaps?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That they have 72% who would be willing. I mean, it was only 58% about 2 months ago that said the exact same thing, and now it's.
What did you see? Did you see that the Ukraine on the agenda of the NATO summit was towards the top, and then they pushed it towards the bottom?
Well, they took it off, and then they put it back on, and they didn't make any serious mention of it, and I think that needs to happen. Trump has denied discussing the ceasefire at all with Zelensky. So what I'm going to do is, we're at the appropriate time. I'm just going to go through what I normally go through at the end, and then I will go until it's time to.
Why don't you do that? I'm going to go refill my water, and you do your thing, and I'll be back in just give me a couple minutes. I'll be right back.
Yep, not a problem at all. I will
see you in a bit.
Finish up. See you. And and there he goes for just a minute, and just because I think we'll probably go and do a second show, and I'll have one in the can here, and perhaps skip tomorrow, or not tomorrow. I mean Sunday. Who knows? But probably not. I already have a decent set of topics set up for Sunday, and but I want to point out to you that at the end of this show, that you can find all of the information you need at damradio.com. You can find our schedule and listen to some of the other great hosts and listen to their shows. You can listen to my shows also at internationalflavor.com, where all of my shows get uploaded and presented and published and you can listen to them at your leisure. Please, I have a Facebook page, which is International Flavor on Facebook. And I really need some support on that page because I lost all of my stuff due to Facebook horror stories. I had to create a whole new page. I lost like 5,000 subscribers. At any rate, that is we're going to end the program even now. Thank you for playing along, and we will see you next time.